Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, the show where brilliant professionals share how to sharpen the universal skills required to flourish at work. Enjoy more career fun, wins, meaning, and money with your host, Pete Makaitis.
Well, it's good to have you here for another episode. Thank you so much for listening. And we're going to get into some good stuff from this leadership thinker, author, speaker, consultant, guru, Emmanuel Gobillot. He was speaking with us on the momentous day of the Brexit vote. And I'm just now releasing to you, so apologies for that. But I think his insights are timeless, even if the interview occurred a number of weeks ago. We do a little bit of batching. So you're going to learn from Emmanuel, 1, what charisma really is and how to project it. 2, when collaboration is ideal versus actually inappropriate. And 3, the 4 steps to collaborative success. So if you want to check out the show notes, the transcripts, the links to items mentioned, you'll find that over at awesomeatyourjob.com/ep45. And if you want to learn those takeaways just faster in an email you can read in under 2 minutes, sign up for the Gold Nugget email lists and you'll have that all the more rapidly. Here is a bit about Emmanuel. Emmanuel Gobillot is one of Europe's most sought-after leadership speakers and has been described as the first leadership guru for the digital generation and the freshest voice in leadership today. He is the author of Kogan Pages UK and US bestsellers The Connected Leader, Leader Shift, and Follow the Leader. His newest book, Disciplined Collaboration, provides further insight into new leadership and organizational models. He's the founder of leadership development consultancy Emmanuel Gobillot Limited and co-founder of Collaboration Partners, a boutique consultancy specializing in helping organizations release the value of collaboration. Here's Emmanuel. Emmanuel, thanks so much for joining us here on the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
Pete, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I understand it's cold and rainy and dark in London.
It is, it's a special day today because I don't know if the news travels as far as Chicago, but today is a big referendum in the UK. So today is the day the UK decides whether it wants to stay part of the European community or not. So that's the day. So I'm a Frenchman. I've been living here for about 30 years now. So I don't get to vote, but I get to watch and see what happens and we'll see. So it's quite a strange day.
Well, it's funny when this airs 1 to 4 weeks later, folks will say, "Oh, wait, that was a while ago. That's old news."
Yeah. But, so you see, I could be gone by then. I could be back in France. I don't know. You never know.
Well, so you have so much stuff to share across numerous books. I've been pulling bits and pieces that I want to chat with you about, but it seems like one bit of an overarching theme, if there is one, is often you look at things in organizations and you say, there's got to be a better way. Tell us a little bit about that, and what are the kinds of situations or real life scenarios and circumstances that kind of spark this thinking for you?
But I think we all have them, and I think you don't have to be in an organization to have them. I think as a customer you have them. You have those moments when you're interacting with business and you think, really, is that what we're going to do? Is that really the best way? And you just don't know. And you think, it's always been fascinating to me about equating our normal life as individuals with some of the business practices. And early on in my career, I used to be in banking a long time ago. And I remember, the whole performance management thing. And I remember thinking, I have children. And I would never dream of sitting down at the beginning of the year with my kids and say, look, it's a new year, so we're going to set some objectives for the year. And then I won't talk to you for 6 months, but in 6 months' time, we'll sit down again and review and see progress. And then at the end of the year, if it's all gone well, you get Christmas. And we just don't do that. We interact, we talk, we discuss, we correct as we go. So all the way through my career, I've been thinking there has to be a better way to kind of reconnect our humanity to the way we do business. And what's always been really interesting for me is how do we get the efficiency and the effectiveness of the formal organizations that we've built, but yet inject it with the energy of the networks that we have, the networks of relationships that we have as people. So that there must be a better way has always been driving me somewhat. And that's why, business is so much fun, because you think, well, actually, what else can we do? What else can we explore and how can we make things work? So yeah, that's been my mantra ever since I started on this road, really.
Well, yeah, I want to hear a little bit about that sort of liveliness associated with the real live connection. So you talk about how the real organization is made up of the networks of relationships people have kind of within and outside the formal organization. And there's even a fellow Bain alum who's created some software that kind of maps the communication pathways that show what is the real org chart look like, and hopefully we'll snag him as a guest on the podcast later. But can you share with us a little bit about that notion? Like, why is that what's real as opposed to what's kind of formal and on the org chart?
I think the reason I chose the word real to describe it is because it is really how organizations work. So anybody who has ever been successful at achieving anything in an organization knows that you do it through a combination of knowing who has a certain set of skills. So you follow the organizational chart in that way. But mainly the way you work is through an informal network of people you know. So you could follow the chart to achieve something, but a client wants you to meet a deadline quickly, or a customer wants something which is slightly unusual and slightly out of the ordinary. So you call somebody in one department and you say, hey, look, I've got that problem, and what do you think? And they come back and they say, well, I don't know, but Jim over there or Janet over there, they'll be able to help you. And I think for me, it's trying to understand how can we use that energy and align it to the objective of the formal organization. So I've never said formal organizations don't matter. I mean, I think it's pretty critical when you want something replicable, when you want something to happen, when you want something to go out to market. You do need some processes and some structure. But at the same time, you have to realize that actually that structure needs energy in order to fulfill over and beyond what it is designed to do. And so the reality of it for me is because we know that's how organization really function, is through those organizations, through those relationships within the organization.
Okay, so I'm sold. Let's talk about bringing that energy there. So I'd particularly like to focus these remarks on a person who maybe they're in their very first kind of management role with a couple of direct reports or even an individual contributor on a team.
Yeah.
We want to bring forth some more energy so things are actually happening and flowing. What are some particular perspectives or practices that we should adopt?
Well, there's two for me. So the first one is one of definition. So I'm very clear that leadership is about impact on influence, not about role. So it's really interesting how in an organization, it's one of the few instances in life when actually followers don't choose their leaders. We have a false sense of security when we made a leader, because actually in organization, it is leaders who choose leaders formally. So you're told, that's it, now you're a leader. Don't be conned by that. You'll never be a leader until people follow you. So if you turn around and there's nobody behind you, you're not leading anybody. So you have to be careful that leadership is not about the role, but it's about your ability to impact and influence the world around you so that people decide to follow you. So the good news is, even if you haven't got a leadership role, you have a leadership position. You can impact the world around you, and you can have that set of skills, and you can have people to follow you. So that's caveat or point to remember number one. But the way for me, the one thing that trumps everything else when it comes to actually creating energy and the ability and creating followers and the ability to get things done is to remember one question which you should ask yourself after every interaction, after every meeting, after every conversation. And that question is simple. It says, have I made that person feel stronger and more capable? Okay. Not happy, that's a different thing. Just have I made that person feel stronger and more capable? And I came to this country, so I came to the UK back in 1985, and I came to study originally. And there was an advert on TV at the time. The British government was trying to recruit teachers. And the advert was beautiful. It said, nobody ever forgets a great teacher. And if you think about it, we all have one. We all have a great teacher. We all have a great boss. We all have a great mentor. They made us feel stronger and more capable. And if you can do that with somebody, actually what you've done is you've created a whole set of emotions that build a whole lot of trust and resonance. So you've created somebody who will be following you for as long as you're around.
Oh, well, that does sound powerful. And I imagine that's probably a key ingredient of what we'd call charisma in general. And you've done some good writing on ingredients of charisma and developing that further. I imagine if people continually walk away feeling strengthened from your exchanges, interactions, they'd say, what a charismatic guy or gal. What are some other components to bear in mind beyond that one question?
The key to the whole charisma thing was, I was doing some work trying to understand, all this thing about what makes a great leader and what is it that leaders do. And I thought, actually, if you think about it, the thing that we need to understand is, what do followers want? What is it that people are looking for when they follow someone? And every time we did a piece of research, every time we did an interview, people had this thing about charisma. And they always said, well, that person is charismatic. And then if you looked at the people who were being described, they were all completely different. Some were quiet, some were loud, some were... And you think, okay, so they all have that one thing in common, but it doesn't look the same. It kind of... There's not one skill we can point to and say, well, they make great presentation or whatever it was. So charisma took a different form. And what I realized is that charisma is actually just a shorthand that people use for, they made me feel something. They made me feel like I wanted to follow them. So then we tried to do some stuff around, well, actually, what is that something? What is it that we look for in followers? And there's three key to this. One is, I think in the US, the presidential election time, people will say, I'll have a beer with that person. They make us feel like they can relate to us. Mm-hmm. And there's something about their values that I can equate to, I can understand, I can relate to, and they can relate to me. So I think that the start of charisma, which incidentally is the first two letters of charisma, is compassion and hope. People get me, they understand me, they show compassion towards me, but they also give me hope. They give me a sense that they can do something for me. And that's the first things we look for in leaders. And then the next thing we look for is to think, but actually, is that all a show, or can they do something about it? Have they got the ability to do something to take us to that vision or whatever it is they're describing they want to do for us? And then we look for some other ingredients about, can they actually describe that vision in a way that is compelling? Is it simple, not simplistic, but is it simple? And do they have a track record of achieving things, or are they just a great talker? But it has to start with the values of the leader. Can I, in some way, share with you the values I hold true, and do they resonate with you? Are they built on the same fundamental ground as the one you operate on?
Oh, that's great. That's great. So we got the relatable component, and it's like, I feel something, that guy, that gal, there's a sense of connection, and above and beyond that, there's some substance, there's some reality to it. Like that's gonna go somewhere. And so that'll do it. If you got those ingredients, then you're perceived as charismatic.
Well, I think it's to start on the road. I think there is a thing that, and I think, you mentioned people in their first leadership role or first management role, or people starting on their career. I think the biggest thing, which is, call it emotional intelligence if you want, call it social intelligence, it depends on which definitions you look at. But there's a key characteristic, which is the ability to challenge without alienating. And you see it with people who come new to an organization, especially when they come from another organization. And they tend to say things like, well, we didn't do that, we didn't do it like this in my last organization, and it was a lot better, or whatever. And that the intent is right insofar as they're trying to challenge you, to make things better, to make improvement. But our first reaction is to say, well, I tell you what, if it was so great, then just go back, and it's kind of that ability to be able to challenge in a way which is accepted, which actually I think really helps people. And it comes back to this compassion thing, about, do you understand the person's position, and do you walk from their position onwards, or do you start with your position and are trying to pull them to you? Mm-hmm. And I think it's easier if you start from their position. If you understand and you think about, how am I going to impact that person? And it comes back to the ability to influence and rhetoric and using emotions as well as facts and arguments. But you have to have that ability to relate to the environment around you in order to be able to challenge it and change it. If you just walk in and say, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do, however compelling that is, it's also incredibly challenging and threatening to people. So, I think starting from the other person's point of view is much more likely to give you charisma, on the basis that they're the ones that are going to give you charisma. I mean, the Greek word charisma comes from the Greek for a gift from the gods. And it wasn't a gift from the gods. It's a gift from your followers. They're the ones that are going to give it to you. So you need to understand them first if you've got any chance of going anywhere.
Oh, this is fun. This is fun. Well, this is kind of like a buffet of goodness. So I'm gonna shift gears yet again. And I want to hear a little bit about your latest book here, Disciplined Collaboration, 4 Steps to Collaborative Success. It's out in the UK, but not yet out in the US as of this airing, but should be rather shortly. So, so it's kind of like the inside scoop for American listeners. Well, tell us, what are those 4 steps to collaborative success?
I'll make it 3, just to simplify things, and then we can go into the 4. I started to think about the book when I heard so much about collaboration that I was starting to become tired of it. And I was starting to think, this whole thing is now becoming a bit of a fad, and everybody is asking people to collaborate. And then I was starting to hear things in organization that worried me. Like, I'm supposed to collaborate, so we have a lot of meetings now, and we don't get much done, but it's okay because apparently we're collaborating, so it's fine. And you get a sense that something is becoming a bit too fashionable. And then I was also I do a lot of speaking and conference platform, and I kept on hearing the same quote, which people were starting to use all the time, all over the place, actually, on pretty much every continent I had the chance to visit. It was always coming back with that old African proverb. And the African proverb goes something like this: if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And people used to use that and say, isn't that marvelous? And all I could think about was, what happens if you want to go far and fast? Mm-hmm. How do you get there? Do you get there alone, together, halfway through? Do you swap people? What's that whole thing about? And in a lot of instances, when you talk to leaders in organization that says, I want more collaboration, actually they don't. What they want is people to consult with each other, or they want people to exchange information, or they want people to coordinate their action. But none of these things are collaboration. Collaboration is one type of exchange, but actually on the continuum of influence from competition to collaboration, you've got a whole heap of other steps in between. So step number 1 to effective collaboration is actually thinking, do I need it or not? Actually, we probably need collaboration a lot less than we think. Oh. We need other forms of influence and other forms of interaction, but probably less of collaboration. And there is only the real instances where collaboration is critical is when we've got something completely undefined for which we have no accountability. So when we're trying to solve a problem, which nobody is really accountable for, but we all know is a problem and none of us know how to solve it, then that's an instance of collaboration. But actually, those instances are few and far between. Now, my biggest issue was, if we don't do that homework of thinking, do I need collaboration, we'll end up missing the instances where we really need it. And so that was the first step. Now, the second step is to think, well, okay, if we identify when we need them, what are the things that we need to bear in mind around collaboration? What are the things that we need to have in place in order to make it effective? And I came back to the 4 fears of collaboration, which is what in the book we've called the 4 steps. But the 4 fears of collaboration are fear of loss of value. So as take a consultant or a trainer or a coach. If I tell you everything I know, does that make me less valuable? Mm-hmm. And that's
no need to book Emmanuel. He gave all the goods on the podcast.
Well, no, but that's about 8 years ago, I was invited to do a speech at Google. So I was preparing myself. I was packing my bag, ready to fly across, and my son, who was 7 or 8 at the time, my son looked at me and said, "Papa, where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to Google." And he said, "Well, why are you going to Google?" I said, "Well, I'm going to Google to give a speech." And he looked really puzzled and he said, "Well, that's really weird because surely if they want to know what you've got to say, they can just Google it up. They don't really need to fly you all the way. And in any case, it's all out there anyway, so they could watch another one." And it's at that stage that you think, well, actually, what is my value? My value is not what I know. My value is not what I say. My value comes my history, my story, my ability to engage with you, our ability to create something together. But actually, when you start at work, we don't spend many time sitting down with people and saying, let's define your value. We don't actually tell people what we think their value is or why we appreciate them, why we appreciate their work. What is it that they have to offer? And so as a result, we're actually slowing down our maturity. You know, maturity for me is being comfortable in your own skin. Mm-hmm. And actually, for a long time, many people in organization just worry about what is my value. And collaboration needs you to be mature to the point where you don't have to worry about your value. Because if you worry about your value, you're never going to interact in the proper way. So step number one is, do you understand your value beyond what it is you know? Because actually, we're going to need you to share what you know. So is there, will there be anything left once you've shared what you know? So that's step number one. Mm-hmm. Step number two is about the two fears, step 2 and 3, if you want, are the two fears which are most common in most organizations to do with collaboration. Fear of loss of quality, fear of loss of momentum. And we know them because we're told if you want something done well, properly, and fast, do it yourself. So again, part of what I do in the book is to walk through how do we get rid of those fears. And to get rid of fear of quality is about having the ability to build a purpose that resonates with people. And not just to tell them what to do, because you don't know what you want done. That's the point of collaboration. But actually to have a purpose which is articulated in a way that people can build it with you. So I'll give you an example. Hollywood. Hollywood is brilliant at putting posters together for a film. And you look at the poster, you see the title, you see the tagline, and you know what the film is about. You can pretty much decide, is that a movie I want to go and see? Is that my kind of film? And then you play that movie in your head, and then you make a decision and say, that sounds pretty cool. I'm going to go and see it. That for me is purpose. Because if we have a shared understanding, then we have much less risk of quality going wrong. And then the last step, the last fear that I talk about in the book is fear of loss of control, which the more senior you are in an organization, the more important it becomes to you. Fear of loss of value becomes less important. Fear of loss of control takes over, which is if a bit like in the old pirate ships, if I stop drumming, are they going to stop rowing? Can I trust that people are going to carry on even though I'm not always there telling them exactly what to do? And that's a tough one. That's a tough one for most leaders to get over and to try to articulate. And so the way I talk about doing that in the book is to be really open and to create a language around those fears, which is a language of predisposition, and to say to people, look, these are my concerns. This is what I normally do. This is where I know it's going to go wrong for me. This is where I'm going to become anxious. What are we going to do together to make sure that we get over that? And if you have the discipline to go through that stuff, which is why the book is called Discipline Collaboration, if you've got a pathway to the process of collaboration, then fear of loss of control is much less likely to go ahead. I have to apologize to you. I live next to a church and the bells have just started, so I don't know if you can hear that.
I can't, bells welcome. It's ambiance. It's like the revelations that you are sharing with us from on high.
Well, there you go. So the whole thing comes back to, actually, can we understand when we need collaboration? Do we understand what's going to get in the way of being effective? And do we have a set of processes and norms that are going to give us the discipline to go through it, rather than just put people in a room and say, you need to collaborate? Because the issue is, if you don't go through those disciplines, all you're doing when people get together is you reinforcing their fears anyway, because actually they're thinking, look, this is a waste of my time. I don't quite know what's going to happen here. Quality is poor. I'm not too sure why I'm here. I don't understand my value, and nobody seems to be in charge, so it's got to be messy. So unless you make collaboration much more of a discipline, I think your chances are you're going to end up in some weird places, which might just be weird and not wonderful.
Understood. Well, I asked a dense question, and you provided some great stuff worthy of unpacking a little bit. Maybe could you share an example or case study of an intervention along these lines that helped turn things around? Like they were kind of caught up in the fears, but we got to the bottom of what was troubling them, and they were able to get unstuck and move forward.
It's interesting because I'd love to say there's some kind of weird, deep magic which happens when I go into a workshop with a team and there's something marvelous happens and then some big revelation and then I'm the hero of the story and everything goes well. But actually, it's very small. And I tell you what it is. The thing which happens most of the time, and I've just finished work with two senior teams, two executive teams, one in the UK and one outside the UK on the continent. And the two things that happen are exactly the same. The biggest revelation for most teams is, wow, we don't need collaboration the way we think we need collaboration. Actually, the stuff that we really calling for is much more coordination between people, much more consultation between people, much more flow of information. But it's not as big as saying we have a collaboration problem. Mm-hmm. And just giving them the ability to, just giving them a set of definition to say, look, this is, on the one hand, you've got competition. On the other hand, you've got collaboration. Let's think about everything that's in between. Which one is it you want? And when do you want it? And just to do that work is actually, 3/4 of the win, because it does two things. First of all, it removes a lot of anxiety that actually we need stuff which is weird and wonderful. And a lot of it can be solved with very simple processes, most of which are already in existence in organization. It's just a question of refocusing them. And the second thing which happens is that they then identify the big ticket items. They just think about, wow, so hang on, there's three things here which are genuine collaboration, and two of which we hadn't even thought about because we were so busy thinking we needed more collaboration everywhere and in everything that we actually were risking missing those couple of things.
I'd be curious to hear, is there anything else you want to make sure that you get a chance to put out there before we shift gears into hearing about some of your favorite things?
What is really fascinating for me about your work and your podcast or your audiences is I have a real fear, and I see that a lot. There's something strange about a career, because actually for the first part of a career, you feel that you have to fit in to the point that you start having no opinions anymore. Uh-huh. And then you get promoted to a point where the only value you have is in your opinions, but you kind of have forgotten how to have any because you've kept them to yourself so much that you haven't shared them. So the thing which is really interesting about your audience, because they're successful people and they're people that are trying to change the world around them and have an impact, is please don't stop. Don't stop having an opinion and don't stop being opinionated. Now, we can learn to share those opinions in maybe a more appropriate way or a way that resonates with people. But please don't stop having opinions, because they'll come really handy at some point, and actually they're the things that add value. It's that ability to show new ways and to get people excited and interested. So that's my plea, is please carry on doing your podcast and please carry on getting your listeners engaged in the way you do, because the more I listen to the episodes that I've listened to, the more excited I get by the potential of doing things differently. So that's all.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I'm honored. And that's a really fun trajectory or chronology. I haven't thought of it that way before with the opinions, but it does resonate. So I'm going to be chewing on that a bit. So, well, now let's hear a bit about some of your favorite things. Could you start us off by telling us what's a favorite quote of yours, something that inspires you?
I heard that quote years ago, and it was, show me a man with his 2 feet firmly on the ground, and I'll show you someone who can't put their pants on in the morning.
Beautiful, thank you. How about a favorite study or piece of research?
That one is tough because there's a lot, but there's a little piece of research that I mention at the end of every intervention I have, every speech, every conversation, and that piece of research I always come back to. It was a piece of research done in the US in about 2003. And people over the age of 65 were asked, if you could have your time again, what would you do differently? And what is interesting in that study is that the same answers come back over and over again. And there's three in particular, which well over 75% of the people interviewed gave. And those three answers were, I would take time to stop and ask the big questions. I would be more courageous in love and in work. And I would try to live my life with purpose, make a difference. And these were the three most common things that people regret. And my call to action to myself and to others is always, why wait? Why wait? We have, 15,000, 14,500 days left, each and every one of us. And that's not that many days to make a difference. So taking time to stop and taking time to ask the big questions, being courageous and living with purpose is something that I hold dear. So that's my little piece of research that I always come back to.
Oh, powerful. Thank you. And how about a favorite book?
There are many, but I'm French. So I have to say The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry. And if you haven't read it, then I would encourage you to do so. It's got a certain magic about it.
Lovely. How about a favorite tool, or whether that's a piece of hardware or software or a gadget or something that has made you more effective?
I am so not interesting, but anything which has got an apple on it seems to have done a whole lot for me.
Oh, me too. And how about a favorite habit, a personal practice?
Einstein was doing an interview, and then one of the journalists said to him, look, is it possible to see your lab? We'd like to see where the magic happens and where you work. And he just took his pen out and said, that's it. Then you've seen it. So sometimes, a pen is also quite handy.
That's good. That's good. And a favorite personal practice of yours, a habit that's been helpful?
I wake up and I read the news, and I try to read a paper from all around the world. So I try to catch something from the east, from the west, and from the middle, depending on where you're looking at the map. But so I try to have a round view. And then I will always switch off in the evening at some stage and speak to my children. And that's I do that religiously. And I've never missed a call with the kids, and then they're now away. But I will do that every day, and until the point where they don't pick up anymore, because it's becoming really annoying. But they haven't done it so far. So that's my favorite practice.
And how about a favorite sort of nugget or piece that when you share it, it gets folks really resonating in terms of they're nodding their heads, they're taking notes, they're retweeting, they're highlighting in the Kindle version of your book?
There's that question that I gave at the beginning, which is this idea around, have I made them feel stronger or more capable? But the whole idea, I think, that really resonates with people is if you unpack that question a bit and start talking about power and how do you have impact on influence other people, and how that evolves and changes throughout your life. And it starts from, as a child, having no impact on influence, being purely dependent on other people for your own survival. In adolescence, you realize you have power and you are your own person, which is why you completely give up on other people and decide to be independent. And then you go to the next stage, which is a kind of form of assertive power, which we have as an adult. And the thing that resonates with people is the difference between what I call personalized power, which is I can be bigger than you by making you feel smaller, or socialized power, which is I can make myself feel smaller I can make myself feel bigger by making you feel even bigger. So this idea that actually we can resonate in the world by making other people stronger rather than just necessarily by making them weaker. And I think when people start to understand that and understand that practice, it's something that actually, most of my books tend to come back to, which is this idea of socialized power around how can I make the world a better place, and how can I do that as an individual.
And how about a best way to find you in terms of folks who want to learn more about your work? Would you point them to your website or Twitter, or where would you have them go?
EGOBILLOT is my Twitter handle. I'm on Facebook as well. I've got just contact me there, or via my website, my email, even my phone number, I think, is on my website. So I am always delighted to speak to anybody. I always make a promise, which is I will never try to sell you anything. I have no time to deliver it anyway. So please get in touch if there's any questions, anything at all. Sometimes I get people saying, hey, you said this thing and I've been trying it out and it didn't work out the way I planned, and can I rehearse it with you or whatever? Just, always contact me. As I said, Twitter is probably the first place, or email, because I travel a lot, but I always endeavor to reply to you as quickly as I can.
Thank you. And how about a favorite challenge or parting call to action for those seeking to be more awesome at their jobs?
Don't wait. I know we all have ideas, we all have thoughts, and we all have regrets of not having done something quicker, or not having spoken quicker, or in many conversations you turn, I wish I'd said that, or I wish I'd done that. And sometimes it's because you didn't think about it, but there's nothing wrong with going back and saying it. Or if you thought about it but didn't dare say it, then, just dare say it and then deal with the consequences. But don't hold back, because I think it's a safe podcast to say it on. I think the people who will listen to your work are the people who want to better themselves. And I think most people who want to better themselves are pretty good already. So don't hold back and make the difference that you seek to make.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, Emmanuel, this has been so much fun. I wish you tons of luck and really appreciate you taking some time to share your wisdom with us here.
Well, no, I appreciate you asking me to do so, Pete. That's really, really kind of you.
Oh, I love that question so much. Have I made that person feel stronger and more capable? It's a good one to remember. It's hitting home for me. So once again, if you want to check out the show notes, the transcripts, the things mentioned, that's over at awesomeatyourjob.com/ep45. And if you haven't already, please push the subscribe button so you won't miss folks like our next guest, Afif Ganoum, who has just an incredible portfolio of product innovations and new ideas. And he lets us into a little bit of his thought process for how he gets good ideas and how he sells good ideas and how we can get and sell good ideas in our own careers. So check that one out and catch you next time.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. To get the most out of this conversation, visit awesomeatyourjob.com to find today's show notes, transcript, and infographic summary cheat sheet. For more entertaining professional skill sharpening, be sure to subscribe to catch the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.